There's something almost counterintuitive about attraction, and most women figure it out too late, if ever. The less you reveal, the more he wants to know. It sounds simple when you say it out loud, but living it? That's where things get complicated. High-value men aren't looking for a woman who hands them everything on the first conversation. They're looking for something that keeps them thinking after you've left the room. Our brains, all of them, men and women alike, are wired to chase what isn't fully within reach. We're problem solvers by nature. We assign meaning to what challenges us. And in the quiet, unspoken language of attraction, a woman who maintains a certain incompleteness about her becomes impossible to ignore. Most women get this wrong, not because they're naive, but because they've been told that openness equals connection. And there's truth in that, just not the whole truth. When you over-explain yourself, when you rush to fill every silence, when you perform vulnerability before trust has actually been built, something shifts. The tension that makes attraction feel electric, it dissolves. And desire? This is the part nobody tells you. Desire doesn't survive in the absence of a little uncertainty. Mystery isn't about games. Let me be clear about that. It isn't about withholding yourself to punish or manipulate. It's something far more intentional. It's choosing what you reveal and when. Think of it like a story you're telling slowly. Not because you're being coy, but because you understand that the most captivating narratives don't give everything away in the first chapter. Cleopatra wasn't powerful because she was transparent. She was powerful because she was never fully predictable. That combination, warmth and enigma, presence and restraint, is what made rooms tilt in her direction. In modern terms, it plays out in the most ordinary moments. The way you respond to a text, or don't. The anecdote you choose to share versus the one you keep to yourself. The joke you let land softly without over-explaining it. These aren't calculated performances. They're expressions of a woman who has a layered interior life and isn't in a rush to compress it into something easily consumable. Behavioral research actually supports this. We're more engaged by partial information than by complete exposure. Our brains lean toward what is enticing but not yet fully known. You become, in the best possible way, something worth figuring out. But here's where the balance matters. Overdo the mystery, and you risk coming across as cold or unreachable. Underdo it, and you blend into the background. The sweet spot is contrast, warmth paired with privacy, humor that doesn't overstay its welcome, interest that doesn't tip into availability. High-value men pick up on this almost instinctively. They're calibrating, even when they don't realize it. They're measuring your energy, your independence, the texture of your engagement. And a woman who understands that dynamic doesn't chase. She simply exists with enough richness that pursuit becomes his idea. This leads to something even deeper, because mystery alone won't hold a man of substance. What mystery does is open the door. What keeps him walking through it? That's autonomy. There's a particular kind of woman who unsettles high-value men in the best way. Not because she's difficult, but because she's genuinely complete. Her life doesn't pause when he doesn't call. Her weekend isn't shaped around his availability. Her sense of worth doesn't fluctuate based on his attention. And he feels that. He feels it the way you feel a shift in air pressure before a storm. You can't always name it, but it changes everything. Immanuel Kant wrote about rational self-determination, the idea that genuine moral worth comes from acting according to your own principles, not from bending to external pressures. It sounds philosophical, maybe even abstract, but in the context of attraction, it's profoundly practical. A woman who makes her own decisions, who pursues her passions without apologizing for them, who moves through the world with a quiet but unmistakable sense of direction. She signals something that no amount of beauty or charm can manufacture on its own. She signals that she's a choice, not a default. Here's the irony that trips so many women up. Dependence often disguises itself as intimacy. Rearranging your schedule for him, softening your opinions to avoid friction, making his world the center of yours, it can feel like connection. It can feel like you're building something, but what it actually builds is predictability. And predictability, in the early stages of attraction especially, is the quiet killer of desire. Autonomy, on the other hand, creates a kind of magnetic tension. You step back, and somehow, that draws him forward. Practically, this looks like maintaining your friendships even when things are going well with him. It looks like staying invested in your career, your creative work, your Saturday morning rituals that have nothing to do with romance. Emotionally, it means experiencing your own joy and disappointment without making him responsible for either. These things aren't walls, they're signals. They tell him, without a single word, that your attention is something worth earning. That shifts everything about how he approaches you. When a woman is grounded in her own life, she also becomes naturally resistant to a particular kind of relational erosion. That slow drift where, little by little, you give more than you receive and start shrinking to maintain peace. High-value men are drawn to women who don't do that. Not because they want someone cold or unavailable, but because they want someone real. Someone whose presence means something because it isn't automatic. Autonomy ultimately doesn't diminish intimacy. It deepens it. Because when two people come together from a place of fullness rather than need, what they build has an entirely different quality. It's chosen, not defaulted into. And that distinction, subtle as it sounds, is felt in every single interaction. Now, once you understand mystery and autonomy, there's a third dimension that quietly determines everything else. And it's the one most women overlook, because it's invisible until you know what to look for. It's how you react. Emotional mastery is one of those things that sounds clinical until you experience it in practice, and then it becomes obvious why it matters so much. High-value men aren't drawn to emotional flatness. That's a misconception. What they're attuned to is stability. The difference between a woman who feels deeply and a woman who reacts impulsively is enormous, even if it doesn't always look that way from the outside. When you respond to everything immediately, when every slight gets a reaction, when excitement spills out before it's earned its place, when conflict pulls you into its current rather than you navigating it, something is communicated about your inner world. Not that you're passionate or authentic, though that's often the intention. What's communicated is fragility. And fragility, however understandable, reduces perceived value in ways that are almost impossible to override in the early stages of attraction. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about restraint, not as repression, but as power, the capacity to be provoked and choose not to be ruled by the provocation. That's what emotional mastery looks like in real terms. It's not about suppressing yourself, it's about selecting. Choosing which reactions serve you and which ones simply vent pressure without any real benefit. In conversation, this might look like genuinely listening, not preparing your response while he's still talking, not rushing to fill every pause with reassurance. In conflict, it's addressing what needs to be addressed with clarity rather than heat, which counterintuitively tends to land far harder than an emotional reaction ever could. In flirtation, it's the modulation of your enthusiasm, showing enough interest to keep things alive, but holding enough back that pursuit remains his natural inclination. Digitally, this becomes even more interesting. In a world built around instant responses, a woman who doesn't reply within seconds, who takes her time, who responds with intention rather than reflex, communicates something powerful without saying a word about it. Delayed reward is one of the most well-documented forces in behavioral psychology. We value what we have to wait for. We assign significance to attention that isn't immediately, automatically available. This isn't manipulation. It's alignment with how human psychology actually operates. The balance, again, is everything. Too much restraint, and you read as indifferent. Too little, and the dynamic flattens. The art is in calibrated engagement, acknowledging him, responding to what he offers, while never fully surrendering the tension that makes things interesting. That tension is not artificial. It's the natural result of two people who both have weight to them. Both have a sense of self that doesn't dissolve on contact. What controlled reactions ultimately signal is emotional intelligence. And high-value men, consciously or not, are prioritizing this above almost everything else. Because a woman who manages her inner world gracefully is telling him something crucial, that whatever connection they build will be stable, that she won't require constant emotional management. that she's someone he can move toward without bracing for the unpredictability of someone who hasn't yet learned to be at home in themselves. That's the through line of all of this, really. Mystery, autonomy, emotional mastery. They aren't tricks in the cynical sense. They're expressions of a woman who knows herself, who values her own interior life enough to protect it, who understands that the most compelling thing she can offer isn't access, it's depth. And depth, by its very nature, takes time to reveal itself. High-value men don't fall for emptiness that performs. They fall slowly, genuinely, permanently, for women who have enough going on beneath the surface that they're still discovering something new long after the beginning. That's not a strategy. That's a way of being, and it changes everything.